When my parents landed in Europe, the first thing they saw wasn't a bellhop or a welcome drink. It was a front desk clerk, shaking her head, telling them their luxury reservation didn't exist. Their faces twisted in confusion. Their voices rose. And every eye in that marble lobby turned toward them. But their surprise didn't start there. It started that morning when I pulled into their driveway car-packed itinerary, printed ready for the one-week trip I'd spent 2 years saving for. I didn't know I'd walk into a choice they'd already made, a choice that replaced me, a choice that rewrote everything. I used to tell myself that my family wasn't broken, just a little unbalanced. A scale tipped in one direction, but still a scale, still salvageable. And for most of my life, I held my breath under that weight, pretending it didn't crush me. Growing up in my parents' quiet neighborhood on the north side of the city, everything looked peaceful from the outside. Fresh-cut lawns, neighbors waving, my mother, Marianne, arranging flowers in the kitchen window, my father, Arthur, smoothing out the newspaper beside her, and somewhere behind them, always behind them, was me, doing the work no one noticed. I handled their bills when they forgot. I drove them to appointments when Arthur didn't feel like it. I picked up Lila from whatever disaster she'd caused, lost jobs, broken friendships, rent overdue again. It never mattered if I was exhausted from my own job or running on 4 hours of sleep. I was the steady one, the responsible one, the one who could be counted on because I didn't complain, because I'd learned complaining didn't change anything. My mother adored Lila. She said it was because Lila was fragile, as if that explained everything. I used to believe the same thing until I realized fragility wasn't the real reason. Lila didn't need protecting. She needed enabling, and my parents were experts at it. Still, I kept trying. Every birthday, every holiday, every milestone I tried to show them, I could be more than the background character they treated me as. The idea for the Europe trip came from a moment of hope, a spark I shouldn't have trusted. 2 years of overtime, skipped weekends, cheap lunches, and spreadsheets full of payments until the amount finally came together. I picked 3 cities I knew they'd always talked about but never had the chance to visit, booked hotels with views, tours that required early reservations, a week that I imagined might finally feel like family. By the time June came, I'd memorized every confirmation code printed, every itinerary, tucked them neatly into a folder in my bag. My suitcase sat by the door the night before, clothes rolled tight, a guidebook slipped into the side pocket. I'd triple-checked the alarms on my phone. This trip wasn't just a vacation, it was a peace offering, a bridge I was still trying to build, even when the foundation cracked years ago. That morning, I told myself everything would be different, that maybe I'd finally get to be part of the we my parents used so easily when they talked about family plans. But as I turned into their familiar driveway, sun climbing the sky, suitcase humming softly in the trunk, I didn't know that the trip wasn't mine anymore. And that everyone inside that house already knew it. Everyone except me. I knew something was off the second I parked by the mailbox. The house was too awake. Curtains drawn back, shadows moving behind them, the kind of energy that didn't match the quiet early hour. I grabbed my bag and walked up the path, rehearsing the cheerful greeting I thought I'd get. But the front door opened before I could knock. And Lila stepped out first. She wasn't dressed like someone waking up early for a ride to the airport. She was dressed like someone about to board a plane, hair-curled suitcase upright beside her passport case dangling from her fingers. She didn't look surprised to see me. She looked prepared. I stopped halfway up the steps. "What's going on?" My mother appeared behind her, wearing the smile she saved for moments when she'd already made a decision and expected compliance. "Oh, Peyton, good. You're on time." I glanced at Lila again, her smirk, her perfectly packed suitcase. A knot tightened in my chest. "Why does she have luggage?" Marianne clasped her hands as if bracing for nothing more than mild confusion. "We've decided to take Lila instead of you." For a second, I didn't understand the words. They floated above me, nonsense syllables, impossible conclusions. "What she's been under so much stress lately," my mother said, tone softening into that practiced sympathy she never used on me. "Your sister needed some rest, so we decided to take her." The sentence hit harder than I expected. Not because of the words, but because of the smile that followed, that little curl at the corner of her mouth. The smile of someone expecting gratitude for betrayal. Behind her, Arthur shifted in the doorway. He didn't look at me. It just seemed like the right thing, he murmured. Lila tugged her suitcase handle with one hand, fake apology dripping from her voice. I didn't even ask. They insisted. Said I deserved this after everything I've been dealing with. Everything she'd been dealing with. An unfinished job application, a rent payment I'd covered last month, a fight with a friend because she forgot to show up. I swallowed hard, tasting bitterness and disbelief. Instead of me, I repeated quietly. My mother nodded. You're always working, sweetheart. You can take another trip later. You understand? Understand. That word again. A lifetime of being expected to understand. The morning sun warmed my face, but I felt cold. I looked down at my own neatly packed suitcase still in my trunk, 2 years of sacrifice folded inside, and realized the trip had been taken from me before I even knew it. I stood there staring at the 3 people who were supposed to know me best, and all I could manage was silence. A silence that felt like a split. A silence that felt like something cracking open inside me. I didn't argue. I didn't beg. I didn't say anything. Because for the first time, my silence wasn't surrender. It was the sound of something shifting, the sound of a boundary beginning to form. The drive to the airport felt like sitting in a house that was already burning silent, smoky, impossible to breathe in. I kept my eyes on the road, hands steady on the steering wheel, even as everything inside me rattled. Lila scrolled on her phone in the back, humming softly, as if she were heading to a spa weekend she'd earned. Marianne spoke first, her voice bright, hopeful, utterly unaware of the damage she'd done. We'll start with the river cruise, she said. Then maybe shopping. We'll see how Lila feels. How Lila felt. As if the entire trip, 2 years of overtime, of canceled plans, of living on microwave dinners, had been calibrated for her comfort. Arthur cleared his throat. Thank you for driving us, Peyton, he said quietly. It means a lot. No, it didn't. If it meant a lot, they wouldn't have replaced me. But I didn't say a word. At one point, Lila leaned forward, tapping the back of my seat. Make sure you drop us at the departures entrance, she said, voice clipped. The one closest to our airline. I don't want to drag my bags too far. Her bags. The bags that should have been mine. I nodded because nodding was the only thing holding my rage inside my body. When we pulled up to the drop-off lane, I put the car in park and got out to help with the luggage. My hands moved automatically, lifting bags that no longer felt like family, but like weights I'd been dragging my whole life. Marianne kissed my cheek. You're a good daughter, Peyton. This really helps us. I stepped back. Yeah, I said softly. I know. Lila shot me a grin, bright, satisfied, unbothered. You're the best pay. Seriously. And that was it. The final straw wasn't the betrayal, it was the ease. The comfort with which they cut me out, stepped over me, and walked toward the terminal without once looking back. I sat in my car for a long moment, watching them disappear into the sliding doors. Watching the automatic glass swallow the 3 silhouettes I'd always tried to fit myself into. I waited until they were gone, until the lane cleared, until my breathing steadied. Then I drove home. The house was dark still. The suitcase I'd packed the night before waited by my door. Like a lie, I'd told myself maybe this time they'll choose you. I walked past it, sat down at my kitchen table, and opened my laptop. Every confirmation I'd saved was still in my inbox. Flights, hotels, tours, upgrades. All of it had my name, my payments, my effort. They'd replaced me on the trip, but they couldn't replace the owner of the reservations. And for the first time in my life, I didn't fix their mistake. I took back what was mine, one click at a time. Cancel, cancel, cancel. By the time the last reservation vanished from the screen, a strange calm settled over me. Not joy, not revenge, just clarity. They would understand everything when their plane touched down in Europe. And I was finally done being their fallback. I didn't expect the first message to come so quickly. I thought they'd at least reach the hotel before realizing what I'd done. But barely an hour after their flight touched down, my phone lit up first with a text from Marianne, then a call from Lila, then another from Arthur, then a storm of notifications so relentless the screen froze twice. I didn't answer. I brewed tea, opened a window, and let the summer air slide across my shoulders while my phone vibrated itself into a panic attack on the table. Only when the buzzing finally slowed did I check the screen. 14 missed calls, 7 texts, 3 voicemails. I opened the messages first, from Marianne. "Something is wrong. The hotel says the reservation isn't there. Fix it." From Arthur. "Maybe there's a mistake. Call when you see this." From Lila. "This isn't funny, we're stuck at the counter." Another from Marianne, shorter this time. "Fix it now." My lips curled, not in triumph, not in cruelty, just in a level of peace I'd forgotten was possible. They weren't used to feeling consequences. They were used to me absorbing them. I set the phone down again and let the silence stretch until late afternoon. By the time I finally listened to the voicemails, their tone had shifted. First voicemail, Marianne, frantic Peyton. They said the reservation was canceled, everything. The tours too. They said the account owner did it, you booked everything. "What did you do?" Second voicemail. Lila furious. "You ruined our entire trip. Stop being dramatic and call the hotel back. Tell them it was a mistake." Peyton, seriously, grow up. Third voicemail. Arthur tired. "This is getting out of hand. Call us so we can sort this out. As if we were all equally responsible. As if we'd all made the same choice. I didn't respond. That evening, I ordered takeout, curled up on the couch, and let their panic roll off me like water. It wasn't revenge. It wasn't spite. It was simply balance. The first moment in my life where the scales didn't lean entirely against me. The next morning brought another barrage, this time with photos. A picture of Marianne and Arthur standing outside the hotel with their luggage piled at their feet. A picture of Lila sitting on an uncomfortable bench glaring at the camera. A picture of the front desk attendant pointing at a screen as if to confirm no reservation, no upgrades, no anything. Their captions varied, but all circled the same message, "Fix it." I didn't. They eventually found a last-minute room at a budget hotel far from the city center. Tiny, dim, the opposite of everything I'd booked. They sent more photos, more complaints, more guilt. By the third day, something in their tone cracked. Gone was the entitlement. Gone was the condescension. In its place came desperation coated in thin humility. "Please call. We're struggling here. We need your help." I still didn't answer, because for once, I wasn't their solution. When they finally arrived home, not glamorous, not glowing, but exhausted and rumpled, I was already sitting on their porch. Not hiding, not avoiding them, just waiting. The taxi dropped them off at the curb. Even from a distance, I could see the defeat in their posture. Their clothes were wrinkled, their hair frizzy from humidity, their eyes ringed with stress. Lila saw me first. "Oh, great," she muttered, dragging her suitcase toward the steps. "Here we go." Marianne followed, her chin lifted in the stubborn tilt she used when she was both embarrassed and angry. "You owe us an explanation." I didn't move. "What do you want me to explain?" "That trip was a disaster," Marianne snapped. "We had to stay in a tiny room the tour company kept saying. We weren't on their schedule. Everything was chaos." Arthur sighed heavily. "You could have called someone. You could have fixed it." I stood, then slow and steady. "Why would I fix a trip I wasn't invited to?" Marianne blinked. "You're being dramatic." "We thought you'd understand." Lila needed a break. Needed a break from what? My voice didn't rise, but it sharpened. From not having a job? From sleeping in every day? From waiting for someone else to solve her life? Lila's face reddened. "That's rude." "What's rude?" I said. "Taking a step down toward them is deciding to take my sister on a trip I paid for. What's rude is smiling while you cut me out. What's rude is expecting me to fund your vacation after you replaced me." Marianne scoffed. "We didn't replace you." "You did," I said. "You absolutely did, and you didn't hesitate." Arthur tried again. "You could have talked to us. Instead, you canceled everything." I looked at him, really looked at him. For the first time, I saw not my father, but a man who had spent his whole life avoiding taking a stand. "I didn't cancel everything," I said quietly. "I canceled what I paid for. You took me out of the trip, so I took myself out of the bill." Silence settled over the porch, not the heavy, oppressive silence I'd grown up with. A clean, clarifying one. Lila crossed her arms, defensive to the last second. "You ruined our week." "No," I said. "I stopped ruining myself for you." Marianne opened her mouth, closed it again, looked away. For the first time, she didn't have a comeback. I picked up my keys, slinging my bag over my shoulder. "I hope you learned something from this," because I did. "What did you learn?" Arthur asked, voice small. "That boundaries exist," I said, "and I'm finally going to keep them." I stepped off the porch. No one followed. As I reached my car, Lila called after me, voice cracking just a little. "So, what now? You're just done." I turned back once. "I'm done being your fixer," I said, "not your family." Then I got in my car and drove away, not triumphant, not vengeful, just free. And if you want more stories where justice finally lands, where it should, support us on Ivory Revenge by subscribing. You'll get notified the moment a new story goes live. For days after the confrontation, my phone buzzed with messages I didn't rush to open. Short apologies from Arthur, overly sweet, carefully phrased texts from Marianne, a single line from Lila that read, "Whatever." None of it carried weight anymore. I answered only when I felt like it, never out of obligation. With the noise fading, my home finally felt like mine. I cleaned out drawers I'd ignored for years, rearranged my living room, opened curtains that had been shut for too long. There was a lightness in moving through those rooms without carrying their expectations on my shoulders. One evening, I sat at my desk and pulled up the old spreadsheet I'd used to plan the Europe trip. Instead of the sting I expected, I felt clarity. That money had always been meant for an experience worth remembering, so I booked a solo trip to Italy. Rome first, then Florence. No compromises, no last-minute substitutions. When I stepped off the plane, weeks later, a soft warmth wrapped around me. I walked streets with no one's mood to manage ate when I wanted, lingered where I liked. Every moment felt like reclaiming something I hadn't realized I'd lost. Freedom wasn't loud, it was steady, and it finally belonged to me. By the time I flew home from Italy, I knew one thing for certain. Love isn't measured by how much you give, it's measured by whether anyone ever gives back. Setting boundaries didn't break my family. It finally showed me which parts were worth keeping. And if you've ever carried more than your share, I hope my story reminds you that you're allowed to step away. If this resonated with you, share your thoughts in the comments and hit subscribe so you never miss the next story. You're not alone, and you deserve better than being the family fixer.